The problem with talking to you is you're like, you feel like a friend of mine. So when I talk to you, I'm talking more like the way I just talk, and I have to constantly go, wait a minute, this is an interview, Geoff.
Welcome back to the Comics Cube, everyone. I am back with Geoff Thorne, and we are talking about the end of Green Lantern and what comes next. How's it feel? 12 issues. How's it feel?
Well, it's actually, if you count Future State, it's 14 issues.
Yeah.
And there was there was a small bit in the Infinite Frontier, so 14 and a half issues. I'm happy. We did what we came to do. My partners are fantastic. We basically got the first arc of the three that I pitched, made it to the end. Sales were pretty good throughout. There were a couple of dips, but for the most part, we held the numbers that had been established prior to us showing up. I've talked about that a bit. I actually don't really care too much about numbers, but lots of other people seem to. So the good news is we did our job well. I don't think anyone connected to this project on the company side they have nothing but something to be proud about. I don't look at it as being done. That's a weird thing that happened because the kids like to get into the solicitations and look at their magic 8-ball and go, well, this means that because I don't see this thing I expected to see. And then on our side, we're not allowed to talk about stuff. So there's this sort of information black hole. I don't know what Dark Crisis is going to do. I'm not writing any of the Dark Crisis books. So I don't know what the fallout of Dark Crisis is going to be. I am not part of the think tank that came up with Dark Crisis. I learned about Dark Crisis exactly the same way everyone else in the world learned about Dark Crisis. But with that in mind, none of that, like when DC cancels a book, they generally say so. So since nobody said that, maybe it won't be with me. I don't know. My contract's up, but there's nothing. No one sent me as like, thanks for your time, whatever. We're going over here now. It's just, we will see. So, and I mean, that's my interpretation. There's no data to give you. So zero data is zero data. If we get to go on, then there's a lot still left hanging on purpose because, Guy, Saranic,
Kyle,
what's going on with Kyle? What happened to the glove? It's gone. The gauntlet, is Kelly ever going to wake up? What's the deal with that beacon thing? Like, how's all that stuff shake out? None of that was like a rush to the end. That was like, okay, book 1 is complete. Set the stage for book 2. So that stage is now set. Everything that needed to be played out in the next 2 arcs has been laid out. I don't need to lay any groundwork. I don't need to do any background about anything. The people who come in for book 2, should there be one, will not be getting the same. It won't be the same tone, and it won't be as information heavy because all of that was laid out in book 1. Everything you need to know for the series is in book 1, like everything. I'm happy. I'm happy with it. I'm very happy with it. We got a second trade paperback coming out in a minute, which will complete this arc. Ryan got a great annual out of it. His thing with Jessica being a Yellow Lantern. But the thing with these DC crises, if you're not in it, like if you're not one of the people making the crisis stories, I don't know how any of it shakes out. All of what I'm saying right now could be like, that was great, Geoff, but we literally rebooted the universe from zero after Dark Crisis. I don't know. I don't have any information one way or the other. So, okay. So I'm just in a holding pattern. The stuff's ready to go if they pull the trigger, and if not, move on to the next.
Yeah, that's pretty much how I imagined having to deal with the multiple crises in DC is as a writer.
Well, I've never had to deal through it before,
Yeah.
so I don't know. But remember, I came at the end of the last crisis, death metal.
Yeah.
So death metal had already happened, and it sort of set the stage for Infinite Frontier, which apparently has now run its course, and we're going into Dark Crisis, whatever that will be. Another thing I think people don't factor in is it's weird how narrow people's visions get when they want to have a particular opinion rather than letting the data guide your opinion, right? So there's a lot of yelling going on about, editorial screwed this up, or, good thing we got rid of Dan Didio. Where's Dan Didio? We need to bring him back. Like everything, right? But it's only to serve a point that isn't even about anything. What's really been going on at DC, and this isn't me having super backstage knowledge, but what's been going on at that company is fairly significant on the editorial side and on the executive side. They got bought.
Yeah.
They got bought, sold, and bought in a very short period of time. There are a whole lot of initiatives that went by the wayside as I was coming. Things that were set up to go died. Many of them died with the exit of Dan Didio. So, and then there were chips to pick up. The editorial deck was reshuffled. People were fired right and left. People were promoted. People were switched from whatever group they were in to another group.
Certain people got hired, rehired.
Yeah, exactly. And there was the whole matter of how are we going to actually package the material? Like there was a lot of conversation about, well, these books cost too much, or they thinned down the line to a smaller number of actual publications. And I'm like, yeah, but the page count is identical. The number of books, the number of stories, and the page space they take up is identical. It's just some of them are now in 40-page books with 2 stories in them, right? So the company can charge you a little more because now there's more in the book. Now, I'm not saying I agree with any. I'm not saying I disagree with him. None of that has anything to do with me. Like literally none of that has anything to do with me. It's just when you're factoring in why was a decision made and you leave out the parts of the decision that have nothing to do with the illustrators, the writers, the letterers, the colorists, and the editor who's on deck for the book. Well, none of us are involved in those big decisions. None of us. All we are doing is whatever we contracted to do moving forward. So I'm as interested as anybody to see what DC does with and about Dark Crisis. I think it's a given. They're not murdering the freaking Justice League permanently. That's just ridiculous. Like it's a nice thing to say. And maybe young people, if there are any left reading comics, will fall for it. But everyone who's been reading comics for more than 5 years is going to be like, oh, neat. I wonder what the story will be, with absolutely no thought that Superman's actually going to be dead. Yes, you're not killing Superman. I'm sorry, you're not. Wonder Woman is not getting killed. I'm sorry. But I think DC, some people are mad about it, but they already said, no, of course they're not staying dead permanently. What are we, stupid? Of course we're not, So, but it's a story. We're just telling you a story. Let the people tell you a story and see if you like it.
So how much of the way this wrapped up, how much of it was you? How much of it was mandated by editorial?
None was edited. None was mandated by editorial.
Really? So Hal getting back his original ring, that was all you?
Was part of it. All of that was planned from the beginning. 100%. People forget the story that was told was mapped out in outline form and approved by editorial before I turned in the first script, over a year ago. So I always knew we were going here. There are little tiny details that got shifted around, but and that had more to do with things happening backstage, of which I had no control. Where it's like, well, you can't really do this. Can you do it some other way? Or a good example would be, well, actually, this is an example of that, but like, always knew Jessica was going to be off the board, right? That's why I invented the Crux Worlds, to put our primary lanterns in places where they could both be out of my way, but also be essentially safe, right? But unbeknownst to me, Ryan Cady wrote this awesome Future State story where she gets a yellow ring. And I was like, oh, really? She has a yellow ring, does she? In the future, you say, right? And I was like, how about right now? You know, maybe that happens right now because it doesn't change the meat of the story, except the length of time she was alone, stranded on that station.
I've never
was
been so
shorter.
sad for the fact that you don't have a beard.
Right. And I asked them and they said yes. But that was a change that happened in the sense of something was going to happen in that moment, plot wise, in terms of Kelly getting knocked out of the box.
Yeah.
At that point in the story. At the time I created the story, it was not going to be Jessica who did that. But as soon as I read that future state story, which is slightly before everybody else, I was like, oh, now it's going to be Jessica.
Who was it going to be?
Awesome story. I don't know. It would have been some other, she would have got taken out of the box in some other way. And maybe Simon would have gone on some rampage to rescue her. Right. But when Ryan did that with the Jessica character, and I was like, one of the things that I've noticed in some of the commentary, and I suddenly pay attention to stuff I never paid attention to before, which was good because it led me in some ways to you. But on the other side, it's led me to a whole lot of people talking a lot of smack about things they don't know anything about. So here's something. There's a lot of, Jessica's whole journey, and she was in a complete fear state, barely could leave the house, has all these things going on in her head. She's finally sort of got them under control. And then this jerk Geoff comes along and makes her a Yellow Lantern. Isn't that just looping back on her journey? And I'm like, no, Yellow Lanterns aren't scared. They scare you. Right? They don't live in fear, they project it. Literally, the ring says you have the power to instill great fear. Take me on, let's go. Right? So this is a woman who knows fear intimately because she suffered from crippling fear for a lot of her life. And now she's a person who wields a ring that instills it in others. So I think that's a fascinating idea. Obviously, Ryan did too, because he's the one who thought that up. And I was like, that's genius. I'm using that. And what I got out of it was a Jessica story that fit into what I want to do with the whole Saranic Sinestro, what the hell's going on over there. She's deeply now embedded in that side of the Green Lantern mythology. And she's still Jessica. Like, it's not like she got the ring and suddenly became Dracula. She's Jessica Cruz. She's going to be a hero regardless of the ring she's wearing. She's going to do her best to be that. And it's not going to corrupt her. It's not going to do anything to her. The ring does not exert mental influence over its user. The yellow rings don't do that. They pick you because you're a bastard, essentially, right? The ring says, oh, you're scary as hell. You and I can work together. Not, you're a really sweet person. Let me corrupt you and turn you into a monster. That's not what the rings do. That's Volthoom over in the Crime Syndicate universe. So, so Jessica was a change that happened that way. But when she meets Simon on Corrigar, New Corrigar, the original written version of that was they recognized each other instantly, and that they had both thought the other was dead because when the rings died, I knew you were supposed to be off in space somewhere. I just assumed you were dead. Oh my God, you're yellow. Why are you in this armor? What the hell? We can't talk about that. We've got to get this child out of here before Sinestro's people kill her, right? So let's table that for later. The editorial did not like that scene. They did not like that reunion scene for whatever reason. I don't know. And I was like, I don't know why, but let's come up with something else.
Oh, so they want to drag out the suspense of them meeting again, probably.
I guess so. Maybe they thought it was too quick. Yeah. I don't know. But we talked about it a bit, and I said, so the version you got was based on that. Like, I tried a version, they were like, nope. And so, because that's the difference between outline and script. When they get the script, there are things that are not in the outline because the outline is just a plot, right? It's unless the character change is necessary to the plot, it's not necessary to include it in the outline, right? We're just telling you the bones of the story. Here's point A, point B, and this person's position here, that kind of stuff. So that was a change. I don't want to spoil, because I talked about this on Nerdette's newsstand. I gave her an exclusive thing But tomorrow, another big change happened because I was not allowed to use some characters that I thought I would be allowed to use. And then they're like, nope, you can't use those characters. And I was like, oh man. And that had a massive ripple effect going forward in the story when I couldn't use those characters. But massive from my side, not massive from the reader's side. The same beats happen. It's just they happen in a really different way than I had initially planned. So that's one thing. Other than that, there's some things I didn't have space to put in. Ironically, I ran out of running room in some ways. I wanted to bring Guy back in the final issue. There's a huge comedic return of Guy that I wanted to do.
The final issue is so packed.
I know everything was happening, and I don't think people could have stood the return of Guy Gardner. But basically, what I was going to do was Guy was going to show up in basically some sort of weird space jalopy that he had while all this has been going on. Guy had sort of with his alien friends that he'd met, put together a starship that could sort of maybe get to home. He barely gets home, sees what's gone on, right? Everybody's celebrating, they got the rings back, whatever. He's pissed off. He walks up to the beacon and just goes wham and gets his ring back. He's like, you're all dead, right? And then walks away, pissed off. And that was going to be the return of Guy Gardner. But I didn't have page space just for a joke, basically. Which means if we get to do book 2, that scene will not occur. I will say this, if we get to do book 2, the time between the end of this book and the beginning of the next book will be real time on Earth. So however long it takes to get to book 2, that's how long the elapsed time is between the end of this and the beginning of the next, from my point of view. Now, editorial may have their own minds about that, or they may say you're not doing it at all. I don't know. We'll see. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Any other things? No, I basically mapped it out and they said, yes, go do it. And,
well,
despite
Well, one of the things that, one of the biggest criticisms that I've seen of the book is that as every issue came out, everybody was saying, oh, these are 2 different stories. These are 2 different stories. These are 2 different stories.
And what did I say throughout? Did I say throughout?
It was one story.
John Stewart story, and it's one story. There's no backup story. It's just one story, right? I don't know.
You knew fans would react that way, didn't you?
Mm-hmm. I did. Well, I didn't know. The only thing I was unprepared for in fan reaction was the level of anger from certain quarters. I knew that there would be people who'd be upset because what I was doing was not normal. So Hal's not the lead in the book. And you see what happened by the end. We got rid of a lot of things that people have sort of considered sacred cows, I guess, for quite some time. And remember, I pitched this all to DC, and it went through multiple editorial regimes while I was writing the book. At any time, any one of the senior editorial could have said, Geoff, everything's great, but this thing with getting rid of all of the Guardians, can you show one sitting on an asteroid somewhere? Nah, that conversation never happened. Okay, everybody was absolutely fine with what we were doing. And partly I think it was because I was whittling things back down, not to 0, but to a manageable size, and also changing the dynamic a bit. There was never a hint of, are you sure you want to do this? There was never any of that. All of that kind of conversation happened before I even wrote the outline. Like, I talked them out through what I wanted to do, and they were like, yeah, go do that. And it stayed that way, even though I had different senior editors over the course of the run. They were fine with that.
Geoff, when this whole thing started, there was that whole thing about how much you hate Hal Jordan.
Yes, it's terrifying. I told everybody to stop being jerks. They didn't want to hear it.
If you read this entire run without knowing your personal feelings about Hal Jordan, I swear no one would ever know that.
No one would know, because it's not my job to do that. And by the way, Hal Jordan is made out of cardboard. I've never wavered on that. I do not like him. I do not dislike him. I think it's a little hyperbolic on Twitter. I say, I hate Hal Jordan. I hate the idea, the fact of Hal Jordan being in the way of other things.
Yeah,
right?
I feel
And
the same
I've
way about
told,
Batman.
there you go, that's fine. But what's weird about it is people, and it's what I'm saying about selective amnesia, about the kind of data you want to bring in. There's a group of people who already wanted to dislike me. So all they want to do is add up chips that would add up to I already disliked this dude. Everything I said about Hal Jordan, I said, except for one tweet, happened well before I got the job. And then one tweet sort of in the while I was getting the job, right? And it was the same tweet over and over again, once every 4 months for 4 years, when someone else would ask a question, which was basically, what's your hot take that makes everybody mad, right? This one, I only have one. It's always going to be the same one. And then I said, point blank, guys, I understand why you're mad, that it's me, but DC didn't hire me so that I would do anything to Hal Jordan. I did not pitch them, here's me coming in to screw with Hal Jordan, and they didn't ask me to do that. This is the truth. These are the true facts. Here's what I will do. Here's my little mission statement. Here's what will happen, guys. Right? And instantly, like, well, no, many people were like, oh, that seems reasonable. Now I'm going to have a wait and see attitude. This guy sounds like a professional, right? But there was a fairly vocal contingent of people that were like, he's a liar. I know he's a monster secretly. This is just him trying to, and I'm like, no, guys, I told you it was going to be what it turned out to be. And there are people that are mad at me now because John, at least at this point, is not a Green Lantern anymore. That was the pitch, guys. That was what it was always going to be. The only thing that shifted was what I was going to ultimately call him at the end of the story, at the end of this chapter. He was not called the Emerald Knight at the beginning of it. He was just, here's where we're going to go, and I'll figure out what that name will be, at some point. And so I said it, and I said throughout, some of you guys who are on my side right now may not be happy when we get to the end. And some of you guys that are really down on me right now may be surprised that, you may have to come back and go, oh, I'm sorry, I misjudged you. Now I don't care, by the way. Judge me, misjudge me, I don't care, because I was always going to tell the same story the whole time. It doesn't matter.
Just have a reaction to the work.
Yeah, well, the contract's the contract. So as soon as the company approves the story, that's the story that's getting told, guys. Like, that's it. They don't, like Gear Shift, or people are really mad about Geoff tweets from 5 years ago. He better put Hal in the center of the story. Well, no, can't do that. The story won't bear that. You can't. The only people with working rings or working that kind of technology were Joe, Hal, Kelly. That's it. Why? Because they're the only ones with unique rings.
Or Alan.
He's not.
He's not a core member.
He's not a core member. People kept trying to bring that up. I'm like, he has never been part of this story.
His costume's not even green.
Yeah, he's got some nerve calling himself Green Lantern, even though he was the first one. But I mean, so I didn't really let any of that, none of that really influence anything. It was just sort of fascinating to watch the sort of turmoil that a lot of people were putting themselves through. And I was like, I wish I could help you kids, but it's going to be the story that we contracted to tell.
If you like a character, it shouldn't really matter what code name he's going by.
Yeah, and I thought it was nice to call him that because in the Crime Syndicate universe, the guy who's now calling himself the Emerald Knight, that character used to be called Power Ring, right? But Jessica Cruz was Power Ring for 5 minutes before she was a Green Lantern. So I thought, cool, why don't we create some synergy? We have an evil Emerald Knight over here, and over here we have the good version of their evil Emerald Knight, and other crap that's going on. All it really changed was all it really did was change the name. What John was going to do never varied, and what he's going to do is not different because of that.
Did you ever see Kurt Busiek's JLA run where he used the Crime Syndicate?
I'm sure I did. You'll have to refresh me. I've read so much of this stuff.
So Grant introduced the Antimatter Crime Syndicate, right? With Frank Whiteley.
Right. Superwoman and
yeah. And
I have that. I might even have that here.
His power ring is a Kyle Rayner analog. But when Kurt started using him after JLA Avengers, John Stewart was the Green Lantern of that JLA run. And then
Mhm.
so powering shows up, and then it's explained that because the crime syndicate is just a mirror of the Justice League, the Kyle Rayner power ring just randomly, all of a sudden, with no explanation, changes
Just
to the
died.
John Stewart
Oh,
power. He
oh,
just
when God
changes.
became. Wow,
He just changes into
that's
this
weird.
black guy who looks like John
That's
Stewart.
actually kind of funny. I have
It
to go
is
reread that
hilarious. I love it.
because it's a malevolent entity that's inside that ring. So it's basically saying, "All right, I'm tired with you. I'm going to reshape you into this now." That's creepy as hell. I like that.
So
Man.
this whole run has been a nice. Well, first of all, I want to say that I think this is the kind of role I would really like to see with Hal Jordan moving forward, because I don't Hal Jordan's not the type of character where I need to see character development or
Well, okay.
progression or
Let us talk about where we are at the end of this story.
yeah.
It, Hal Jordan appears at not in a flashback. Hal appears in issue 1. Hal appears in issue 2. Hal appears in issue 3, and then we don't see Hal for a minute except in flashbacks. Then he shows up again in issue
10.
10, and he's in it until the end. So 10,
Yeah.
11, 12, 1, 2, 3.
He's
6 issues.
He's heavily in it at the end.
6 issues of a 12-issue run. So he wasn't really sidelined, was he, kids? He just wasn't the focus of this story.
Yeah.
And he did Hal Jordan stuff whenever he showed up.
No, he has some amazing
Right?
moments.
Yeah, he did some great stuff. And wait a minute, who rebooted the core?
Exactly.
Like, give me a break, right? But where we are at the end is, rephrase that. Where we are at the end of this arc is power battery destroyed, theoretically for good, replaced with the beacon, which does not work the way the old power battery did, as we've seen. We have a new set of enemies, a new weakness for the Green Lanterns to have to deal with, magic out of cosmic magic versus terrestrial magic, right? We've established through, this is the thing when I say, when you read my comics, the stories are different, the point of view is different, the way I tell the story is different in each comic. But if you don't actually read the words, you're not going to be able to keep up. You have to actually read it. You can't skim it. These guys have an agenda. They have great power. And all the way through the book, you saw the rings have problems with magic. Why do the rings have problems with magic? Because the Guardians don't like chaos. So none of their devices are good in handling it. They try to just remove chaos from the universe, and even they were unsuccessful. They only got about half of it, leaving magic behind to still be magic, right? So now we have a weakness that is plausible. It isn't that dumb yellow thing, which, God bless Geoff Johns for coming up with the idea that the yellow weakness was based on parallax being inside the battery. That's gold. Okay,
Yellow
because
fear
otherwise,
demon.
otherwise it was stupid, right? And frankly, I think it came a little bit out of Asian hate in the Silver Age, to
Really?
be honest with you. Well, Pie Face is a secondary character. The weakness is yellow, and it's fear. Come on, guys.
I can see that. Okay.
Right. So whatever. I'm not trying to start any wars over that because it got fixed over time. Who cares, right? Who cares how it started? It got fixed. And that was a cool thing, the creation of Parallax as an entity. As much as I dislike what it did to Hal Jordan as Parallax, because I thought that was a baller ass move to turn Green Lantern into the biggest bad guy ever. But what that meant was removing that impurity took this dumb thing that we were all like, really? Yellow? Do you guys not know how colors work? Right? Because green is yellow and blue. So why would yellow, which is a component of green, be a weakness? It makes no sense. And fear plus hope does not equal will. So let's just get rid of that. Okay. But if it's just gone, it's an all-powerful weapon distributed amongst however many Green Lanterns there are. And I don't like all-powerful anything. As a reader or as a writer, I don't like all-powerful. I like things that can knock the hero back from his pins. Here's a paradigm that most people seemingly who want to yell about this stuff in the audience don't remember. The bad guy is always better equipped, smarter, and stronger than the hero or team of heroes that is out to stop them. If that's not the case, there's no point in telling the story. So Green Lanterns have magic wish rings that can do anything, at least according to the canon, anything that you can think of, and put enough, I really wish this was true, behind it, then the ring can do it for you. I think that's lousy. I think that ultimately makes for a stagnant, it's conceptually stagnant, right? It's a get out of jail free card for basically anything. And that's why you had to come up with yellow as a weakness. It's the same thing with Superman. He had every power in the world. Oh, that's ridiculous. Kryptonite makes him weak and die. Let's do that. Because otherwise there's no drama, right?
What do you have against super ventriloquism?
Oh, but he was super everything. Anyway, so
there's one panel where Superman calculates something, and then he's like, using my power of super mathematics, and I'm like, I'm sure that's just mathematics, Cal.
Yeah, that's just math, dude. There's no super. Anyway, right? So there were things that I was trying to do with that, but at the end of the day, what do you have? You have Hal Jordan back in the saddle. You have a Green Lantern Corps, which I have plans for why it's 600 people, of which roughly 200 are Green Lanterns, roughly 200 are Star Sapphires, and roughly 200 are Blue Lanterns. Okay. I have none of this is haphazard. None of this was randomly, oh dear God, we're over. We better hurry up. And none of that. This is setting the stage for book 2 and what that's going to be. All of this stuff has repercussions, right? So, like, wow, it doesn't matter. The point is, Hal's back in the saddle. Joe's ring, is it still unique? Is like, are all the Green Lanterns? They all were wearing Hal's Silver Age uniform when they got reconstituted, including Joe. So, and Hal says, this feels like my Abin Sur ring. None of these lines are accidental. It's a hint at what's to come, right? And I've said point blank, the Guardian said at the beginning of the book, all of you are now equal.
Yeah. When Joe reconstituted her costume to look like Hal, I went, oh, but I like her costume.
But she didn't do that. The ring did that.
Yeah.
The ring did that.
When
right?
the ring
Which is
did
why
that.
she fixed it.
And then when she fixed it a few pages later, I was like, oh, good.
Yeah, no. Like, what do I look like, guys? Come on. I'm not going to do that to Joe. Like, she's got spark. But I'm saying, so Hal's back in the saddle. Joe's back. Now Joe is integrated into the regular DCU, which was one of the things they wanted me to do. If we were going to use her, part of the reason was Far Sector was way over here by itself doing its own thing. And the odds of Nora Jemisin coming back to write more of that, she's off in the world of books being a gigantic thing. When is she going to have another chance? When is she going to have another window to come back and revisit? The company's like, we like this character. Let's bring her into the main mythology. Let's not have her off in a lone little corner. Let's bring her in. So that was part of why she's in this book.
She's a great character.
She's fun. Joe's great. But now, who have we got? Joe and Hal. And nobody's the rookie. There's no rookie. He can't train her. She's been doing stuff on her own, completely, no core, for a minute. So she's going. Also, she was an actual cop. If you're going to call the Green Lantern space cops, Joe was an actual cop.
Yeah.
Hal was a test pilot. I'm listening to you. Sorry, no. Better sit back and do it. I'm doing some detective work here. Right?
I feel like I want to see these two together.
Yeah, me too. Right. I don't necessarily want to write it, but I would love to have a writer come in and do that dynamic. I think it'd be a very interesting dynamic. And none of the I'm the old hand at it, you need to listen to me, rookie. Oh, you crazy old white dude. None of that would come up because both of them are Green Lanterns. So anyone who fell into that trap is a sucker from my point of view. But there's a great story to be told with those two characters. I just don't care about Hal, so I don't want to be the guy to write.
You don't want to be the
story.
one to write it. On a scale of 1 to 10, how likely is it that Hal would try to sleep with her?
She's bi, so I mean, and she's hot. I don't know. Hal is the Captain Kirk. It's weird because I don't find Captain Kirk to be cardboard at all, but that's partly because William Shatner played him, right? On paper, he's your standard 1950s spaceship captain. But frankly, the way what's his name? Chris Pine played.
Yeah.
Those are actors embodying a character. There's only so much a writer can do, you know. So I'm not a big fan of Hal's, but he's the Captain Kirk of the Green Lantern Corps, and you know, let Kirk be Kirk. It's just, I don't know if he's Joe's type, not because he's male, but just because he's Hal. Like, I don't know. But it'd be an interesting dynamic, and has he been played as a guy who wants to hit everything he meets? Like, does he always try to get in the pants? That's where he's not like Kirk, I guess, because
Usually blondes, but
yeah. So, and isn't he deeply in love with Carol Ferris? And isn't that really where you want him to land? I don't know. I don't care.
Let's talk about the ascension of John Stewart. So,
Okay.
John
What do you got
Stewart,
for me?
you've got what a ride, right? I mean, a lot of people thought you were taking him off the board, even though it was clearly publicized as a John Stewart story.
And the writer keeps saying what it is. Like, well, okay.
You tie him in with the
Again.
New Gods. You clearly, obviously, especially by the last issue, you show a very big love to the King of Comics,
King Kirby. But if you're going to use the New Gods, okay, again, the New Gods, that part of the mythology was always going to be in the story, but the way that they're in the story shifted because I wasn't allowed to use these characters, which you'll find out about. Okay, so they were going to be there always, and all those events would have happened, but the way that all that happened was massively different in the outline. Okay, John's ascension began in Mosaic. Okay, the old We Shall Not Name It miniseries by that pedophile. The guy turned out to be a pedophile. And some other people, by the way, who are absolutely not pedophiles and should not be penalized because one of the people on the team is a monster and is currently in prison. Okay, that was a great science fiction story about a character who never got any light put on him except his original light. And then since then, basically no light.
Yeah.
So, but Mosaic ended abruptly. And then John's career went weird as a character. But people forget, I forget which issue it was now, but Hal, in a Hal story, Hal meets these prophets on a planet. And they're like, that dude over there, he's destined for some big things. Not you, black dude over there, he's going to be some bigness. Pay attention to him. Nobody did anything with it. They did a story where the Guardians picked John, and it wasn't random guy was closer. Now we're going to do another one. It was, okay, this guy's special. We need to keep an eye on him. Best way to do that, make him a Green Lantern. Then he's right with us, right? I didn't make up any of this crap. It's just that a lot of the people in the audience file that under either, oh, that's part of Hal Jordan's mythology, or they just freaking forgot it, or they never read it. But I never freaking forgot it, because growing up, these were the crumbs that I was allowed to have as a reader about the character that I was really into. By the way, John is not my favorite superhero character, even at DC. Barbara Gordon is my favorite character at DC.
Really? Barbara Gordon?
Okay, yes. Oracle is my favorite superhero character, period. And definitely my favorite character at DC. Oracle, not Batgirl. At Marvel, Hobie Brown is my favorite character, and then Captain America. Okay, so bite me with all that extra crap. But yeah, so he had all these little tidbits. Why after Mosaic does he pop up as a Dark Star? That was random. Okay.
Everything about the Dark Stars was random, though. Everything
random, right?
Every person they picked to put in the Dark Stars is like, well, we got these people we're not doing anything with.
Like, whatever with that. And then he gets beat into a wheelchair by the only son of Darkseid not created by Jack Kirby. Graven beats him almost to death, right? And then he has these weird power eruptions, which at first were just like, why is John having these weird power eruptions with no ring? He's having all this green energy power eruptions. And then another writer was like, oh, you're right. That made no sense. Here's why. He was possessed by this being who was a servant of Cronus secretly. And I'm like, good catch. That's not what they were trying to do. They just forgot, right? And so what you look at is, it's what happens to secondary characters a lot. A lot of wacky crap happens to them, but it doesn't add up to anything. But when I come in, and my whole thing was, I want to tell a John Stewart story, and I remember most of these details. I'm like, well, they said he was the first one to ascend. What does that mean? Let's find out. And ascension, I decided what it meant. In the old days, it was he's a guardian. He's the first human guardian. But I was like, well, what is a guardian? Because there's still Malthusans, and all Malthusans are not guardians. Most Malthusans are not guardians. So the guardians are to the Malthusan species what John is to the human species. Pretty simple, basic logic there. But what does that mean? What do the guardians actually do? What can they do? Everyone loves them to be all powerful and all knowing and do all this stuff. And I'm like, well, if John's one of them now, he's the first human one, he can do all that guardian stuff. Seems pretty logical to me, but how does it work? There has to be some kind of cause and effect, energy exchange, right? Basically, they have to eat something in order to have energy, right? There's no such thing as perpetual energy, kids. Not in real world physics, there's not. So organisms must take in something, excrete something in order to have energy, right? Even if the organism is made out of energy, there still must be something like that transference. So John gets the ability, all ascended beings, of which he's the human one, he's the human representative of this, they basically eat all cosmic forces. Their bodies do with all cosmic energy what Kryptonian bodies do with sunlight. Kryptonians are solar powered.
Yeah.
Ascended are cosmic power. They eat cosmic power like the Silver Surfer does, basically, right? So I thought that was neat. And then the wrinkle was, yeah, but what would happen if he got shot with something that came out of Darkseid or out of a new god? Like, that's some random ass energy. That's basically, how do you inject Kirby energy into a Garter Fox universe? Right? So, and who decides who ascends? Not the Guardians. They were surprised by the arrival of John. So, so at the end of it, what we have is basically a Guardian level being. And the Guardians have been shown over the course of their history to be fairly freaking powerful. Like an individual Guardian, it's fairly powerful. This version of John, he ate a Godstorm right before he attacked the Guardian who had just eaten all of the other Guardians, all of the Zamarons, all of the Malthusans, and all of the controllers. So that kind of tells you how badass John is at that point in the story. It isn't a power-up for a power-up's sake. He's not. I agree with anyone in the audience who's like, well, Jesus Christ, who can fight him? What is he going to? Oh, can't fight Galactus every week. I'm like, yes, I know that. He's not going to be. It's not going to be like that. This is not what that story is about, right? So what are the dark? We saw what the dark sectors are for, or at least what ESAC built the dark sectors. We only saw Dark Sector 1. There's 6 or 7 more. John had left. That's another thing. Some of the numbers are wrong. John took 1,000 people out. He knows for sure 300 are dead. Mm-hmm. And then there's a whole bunch missing, and then we can probably assume about half of them are dead because of where they were when their wings went dead. But that means there's several unaccounted for. Plus, there's at least 200 just on the lighthouse people that were part of the Imskian delegation that was hanging off of Kenz's belt in Future State. That's who the people are. That crew, those are the people, the colonists that were in her belt are the population of the lighthouse. So those guys aren't those lanterns. Those lanterns are dead or stranded in the dark sector somewhere at this point. So of course, John went back with his fabulous cosmic power now to try and do something about it, right? The thing that people seem to overlook is at the beginning of the story, the Guardian said it would take 1,000 lanterns, which is why John had to take 1,000 lanterns, to punch through the barrier that's outside the dark sectors. We only got 600 lanterns of any color total right now, and only 200 of them are green. So no one's getting in through that barrier. The only way out of that is if John and the other guys punch back out, right? He's the only one empowered to do anything about that, so he went back, right? Seems pretty straightforward to me.
600 lanterns of 3 colors.
Yeah, it's not. I don't want to like lock it in as 200, 200, 200. Yeah. It's looser than that depending on what the story requires. But yeah, there's only 600 people who can call themselves any kind of positive lantern.
Yeah, the negative lanterns are unaffected.
Completely unaffected. Completely unaffected.
And
yes,
Indigo
and it is.
tribe.
That's also not an accident. Oh, don't mention the stupid Indigo tribe to me. Freaking hate the Indigo tribe. They were never going to appear. I don't know what happened to the Indigo tribe. They're off being Indigo somewhere. I don't care about them. If I need them for some random thing, they'll show up. Otherwise, no.
That's for someone else to pick up.
Those are toys for other people to play with. I do not enjoy the Indigo tribe. Sorry, I'm not required to, and I don't. So yeah, so that's the end of it. That's where we have John. Another thing that I was asked to do was maybe whittle down the number of human Green Lanterns, if you can find good reasons and clean ways to do so. So at the end of the story, John, no longer a Green Lantern. Simon, no longer a Green Lantern. Kelly, who was never a Green Lantern, even though people kept trying to say she was a Green Lantern, including her, absolutely not a Green Lantern. No glove. She's not even a Teen Lantern. That made up thing. She's nothing. She's just a chick from Earth that's stuck on Oa right now in a coma. Jessica, Yellow Lantern. Guy and Kyle, missing in action. Now I've already spoiled. Definitely Guy's fine, right? Okay, Guy's off being Guy somewhere. But what the hell's happening with Kyle? I know. And that leaves Joe and Hal. That's it at the end of this story. So Hal didn't get touched, as I said he would not. He had a pivotal role to play. He just wasn't the spotlight. Joe, who was off in her own little Elseworlds universe, is now in the main universe as the other Green Lantern.
And you even explained how her ring came to be different from everyone else's.
Yes. And it also, by the way, I took great pains not to break Far Sector. Right? Nothing I wrote in this story changes one word or activity that happened. Doesn't recast anything except why did the Guardian choose Joe? Right? Either not even why she chose Joe specifically, but like why is Joe's rings necessarily different? Now you know. Okay. But if you never read my stuff and only like Far Sector, my stuff doesn't matter. You don't have to know it. You don't have to care about it. That's not an accident. Okay.
How do you feel about the big Jack Kirby twist being spoiled on the internet before the issue came out?
I dislike everything about comic book marketing, both as a fan and as a writer. I don't know that it's anything specific to this particular group of marketers. I'm not a person who likes the movie trailer to tell me the whole movie before I go. Right? Otherwise, why am I going to the freaking movie? I don't want to know the end. I don't like that guy sitting next to me talking, saying, I know how it's going to end. Then why are you here? Go away. Stop bothering me. I don't like the cover that revealed that Hal was going to be in the book. I didn't like it. It's a beautiful cover. I love Bernard's work.
Yeah.
But had I had any role in the choice of those covers, that would have not been the cover. You would have got to the end of that issue and went, oh, damn, the Justice League. I better come back next month. But I don't make those decisions. I don't know how those decisions are arrived at. I do not like that. I don't like the solicits that back when I was a kid, and maybe the first time I've ever said that phrase, back when I was a kid, when we didn't have access to the solicitations, these things were a complete surprise. When they showed up on the shelves, that's when you found out. And now everybody's scrambling to get to the end of the story before the end of the story. And so the solicits sort of tell the retailer what kind of to expect in a given book. I don't know why they're telling them that. They're going to order Green Lantern or they're going to order Batman. Unless something significant to the line of the comic happens, I don't know why you're telling the retailers. They know they're going to sell a Batman comic. They know they're going to sell a Superman comic. And not every comic book is an event. Not every issue of every comic is a necessary event. The story's going to progress somehow, right? So no, I don't like that. I don't like it, but there's nothing I can do about it. Like literally nothing. So I try not to concern myself with things that I can't affect the outcome, where I can't affect the outcome. Nobody asked me, nobody consulted me. And even if they had, at the beginning, they consulted me a little about covers, but I only had one vote out of many. It wasn't like, I really like this. Oh, the writer liked it, therefore we'll do it. Absolutely not that.
Yeah.
Not that at all. Marketing has its own thing going on.
I was really sad about it because I remember you told me that something was going to happen in issue 12 and I should just message you when I see the surprise character.
And then
like, oh, okay. I know who it is
yeah,
now.
yeah. I mean, it bothers me. That stuff.
Yeah.
But the thing, they spoiled the Jessica Cruz thing, right? They spoiled that.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I would have shown black covers and said something really interesting is going to happen in this issue. Y'all need to check this one out. You know, do something to tease the audience. Don't like, let me put it to you like this. People don't remember this again, because I'm older than most of probably people who watch this show. I remember the first trailer for the first Alien movie. You know what it was, right? It was the camera going over a landscape, a dark, obviously alien landscape, although we didn't know what that meant. And then it finally arrives on an egg floating above the landscape. And then the egg cracks and a little bit of light comes out of it. And there's this ominous freaking music playing and the word alien comes across the screen. And then you get the date, I think. That was the trailer for Alien. And everybody showed up.
How does it feel? You know, obviously Green Lantern is not a Jack Kirby creation, but here you are infusing so much Kirby into these mythos.
Okay.
This also marks the second universe where Jack Kirby has shown up as a godlike character.
Third Image universe too. Alan Moore.
Oh yeah,
Mark Waid, and me.
This is the third one.
Yeah. Well, two things. Jack is, aside from my love for all things Kirby, Jack is a foundational aspect of modern comics. Modern comics, DC or Marvel, don't exist without Jack. Modern comic book movies absolutely do not exist without Jack. Like, they don't exist without Jack Kirby. So that's one. He is a giant among giants, whether the kids remember that or not. It's a fact. Two, the other thing people seem to forget about is I injected and I can swear, right?
Yeah.
I injected a shitload of magical stuff into this story. One of the big bad guys, and part of the reason the Guardian Koios was able to do what he was doing is because these magic users, they're not fucking around. But nobody wants to talk about that because Jack Kirby showed up, right? So Jack is a sort of a counterbalance. He's got so much gravity that as soon as his image is invoked, people are like, oh, all I was doing was connecting the dots in Cosmic DC. That's it. That's it. My version of connecting the dots in Cosmic DC. If John had not gotten hit with Source energy or God energy that way, and more importantly, the getting hit by Darkseid, all that did was jump set how his power works. That's all that did. It didn't give him any extra juice. It was when he ate the God Storm that turned him into this ridiculous powerhouse that he was, right? But those are sort of Kirby concepts, and I wanted to bang this I wanted to bang the Kirby universe up against the Gardner Fox universe, for lack of a better word, in a different way than other writers in the Green Lantern space have tried it, and frankly, than most of the other writers of Kirby creations have done in the DCU. I wanted to do that sort of quasi-sci-fi, quasi-mystical thing. And I thought this was a way to accomplish that.
Because that was what the New Gods are, right? That's the whole Kirby aesthetic. It's both mystical and sci-fi.
And exactly. And I wanted to bring that in. And you know, honestly, if DC let me, I could tell a hell of a Game of Thrones story about the pre-Darkseid version of the New Gods just going at it. They're never going to let me, but that's what I would want to do. One of the things I would want to do. On a personal note, part of the reason I love comics is Jack Kirby. If I'm using the New Gods and I have someone speaking for the source, it's going to be Jack Kirby.
Of course.
That's the end. End of story. By the way, you won't find his name written in any of my scripts. What I did was I found a photo of young Jack Kirby, and I said, make the source look like this guy. Nobody on the other side went, isn't that Jack Kirby? Nobody did any of that. I found the youngest photo I could find of him because his brain was always young.
Of course, yeah.
Right. And it was never meant to be anything except I love you, Jack, in that regard. But in the context of the story, the source was going to talk to John in some way. And I could have done some sort of big cloud face, or the source wall shows up and the flaming hand starts painting the words. I'm
Starts
like,
writing the words in flame.
Yeah, that's just like, who's doing that? Nobody's doing that. So, and by the way, Mike Attia's coloring on that last issue,
yeah,
that's a thing of beauty. Like, that was, as much as I love Marco and Tom, we don't talk enough about Mike.
he's the glue.
That guy, he is a beast. Like, that was just like, look at me go, Mom, look at me go. I love that issue. But yeah,
Marco and Tom don't draw alike, but it looks like one book, and that's because of Mike.
That's Mike. That's Mike. Like, he's the bridge. So I didn't think one thing or the other. I was surprised that anyone would have a problem with that. I think it's absolutely appropriate that Jack is a foundational character in both Marvel and DC, and I was happy to be the guy to make that a canon fact. And there's a loophole. The source says this is just how I look right now, right? I was a turtle once, relax, More importantly, what are you up to, crazy John Stewart? What are you doing, right? And it's, anyway, I can go off on that. But yeah, I love Jack, and I use Kirby Crackle. I use Kirby references in most of my scripts. Like, all the illustrators who work with me will vouch. At some point, Jack Kirby gets mentioned in terms of this effect is like that, or this technology, just think Kirby and go crazy, like that. So
you have two main antagonists in this story. With a lot of other antagonists, but you have two main antagonists in the story, Esak and Koyos, with two varying viewpoints. Esak wants to restore things to the way they used to be. Koyos wants things to evolve at the cost of everything else.
Oh, God bless you. God bless you. You're the first person who noticed that. Oh, my God.
Where does Geoff Thorne stand on this whole thing?
Okay. God bless you for asking that question. Okay. People want to talk about meta commentary. I am not immune to meta influences. Absolutely, what you just described is exactly correct. Koyos wants to do away with everything old. He wants the universe to be unfettered, to do whatever the hell you want, basically. Go crazy. That's what the universe wants. I think that's what the source wants, right? Esak, his point of view is, everything that has changed for the worse. So I'm going to bring back the way it used to be. If you're in any kind of a sense of comic book fandom, you'll understand that that's a description of the two extremes that are constantly at war in our fandom. Everything new, all that old stuff is terrible. All those white guys did all this terrible crap, and it needs to be this now. They suck. I'm like, they couldn't have sucked, but so bad, you're here. You love them. They made it. You kind of like what they did. Can we all at least agree on that? Shut up, Geoff. You're with them, right? And then the other guys are like, all this new crap, these gay people and these brown people and these Asian people, and they did all of that, right? And that sucks. They're hurting our hobby. And I'm like, you know what? You guys suck too. That's crap. That's crap too. So I made my villains those two extremes. You're the first person who caught it. You are literally the only person who's mentioned that. And it's so blatantly obvious to me. But, and like,
I think it's because they don't fight. I think if you had a scene where the two
of them go at each other,
where they go at each other, it would be more obvious.
Sorry, guys. Yeah, so Esak literally says, I want it back the way it was. I'm trying to bring them back. Did the new gods die while I wasn't looking? Esak has decided the version of the new gods we've got isn't correct, right? I'm bringing back the Kirby, essentially, new gods. That's his whole motif, at least in this story. I don't know what he's going to do now that, John screwed up the program. I don't know what his plans are now, but So that's what it was. Those two characters were meant to be those two extremes, right? And again, it's not an accident that the people fighting Koyos are relatively new to the Green Lantern mythology.
That's true. Yeah.
Not an accident. I could just as easily have had Simon out there with John if I wanted. He could have just as easily gone off and been his sidekick throughout all of that. Did not do that. Kelly, Joe, Simon, Jess, versus the guy who wants everything to be new all the time. John, who's been around since what, 73, is versus the guy who wants everything to be the way it used to be. And then they get together, both of the teams of Green Lantern people kill the guy who just wants everything to be loosey-goosey. Like, anything you want, yeah. Nope, not having that, get out. Right? And John beat Isak, but did not defeat him. Like, he's still alive. The last time we saw him, Lonar, who said, I won't kill him, is just holding him. Like, he's been defeated, but not beaten. So what's going on there? I don't know.
I like to believe Lonar is still holding him right now.
Yeah, they're perpetually just holding him forever. Just go to sleep, go to sleep, go to sleep. So yeah, so that was definitely the theme of the book. You have pegged the theme of the book. You should, I don't know, I don't give out no prizes. I don't know what I can give you, but you're literally the only person who pegged that.
And as a fan and as a writer, like, how do you balance out the old and the new?
I just like good stories. I'm not a big, oh my God, okay. The problem with talking to you is you're like, you feel like a friend of mine. So when I talk to you, I'm talking more like the way I just talk, and I have to constantly go, wait a minute, this is an interview, Geoff. But the truth is this, death metal did something that I don't think anyone really understands. Everyone has their own different idea about what the result of death metal was. Basically, they said everything that's ever happened in DC Comics is now in. Everything happened. You know, every fan is like, that can't work. That's not possible. There's so many things that contradict each other that if everything happened, nothing happened. Like, what does that even mean, right? Now, from the fans don't have the one thing the fans are handicapped by is they don't have their hands on the wheel. They're not driving. So all they get to do is go, what is that even? But the writer has to choose some direction, right? So my feeling on that was, if everything's in, that means I can choose what I want to care about and what I don't. And I'm not wrong because everything happened. So that's not possible. That paradox means that the canon is what I say it is because everything happened, right? So that whole Dayton Arisa thing, that happened for Hal Jordan. Now that's back in. That's not gone anymore, kids. That all happened. Unless I say it didn't happen and while I'm writing the book, right? So I don't know if that was the intent. I don't know if that's why they did it that way. I came in after these things were decided. Don't know, don't care. But a whole bunch of crap that went on in the Silver Age that I'm not interested in. All that stuff, it's funny to look at the covers. I do that on Purchase Channel from time to time. We do this, where there's, you know, Batman and Superman tormenting their sidekick or tormenting Lois in some horrific way. And I'm like, did these guys just hate women and children back then? What the hell was this? You know, there used to be that website, Super Dickery, which was literally just Superman being an asshole to whoever on the cover of this book. And that was this month's Superman. And I'm like, who thought this was good?
Mort did.
Mort apparently did not like women or kids because he greenlit a lot of stuff that was straight misogyny. And I don't know what the opposite of pedophilia is, but he did not like children at all. So I don't know. Mort was probably a lovely person. I have no idea. But those covers definitely had a point of view. And the stories did too. So I'm not I like some of that stuff. I'm more like, I would skip the Silver Age, go from Golden Age to Bronze. That would be my choice. I don't much care about the Silver Age, except for specific individual stories sometimes.
Yeah. I like the Silver Age for its purity of ideas, but those
Yes,
they're hard to read, especially when you
they're for
consider,
kids.
especially when you compare them to Silver Age Marvel.
Yeah, that's the thing. People forget a lot of this stuff was happening at the same time as the Avengers and the first X-Men were coming out. And you're like, it's not 1952. And was 1952 actually like this? Because it sucked if it was like this. You know, now, I'm not, again, the thing with our current day fandom is I can say all that stuff, and then somebody's going to like, yeah, but I love the Kurt Swan Superman. What's wrong with Jeff? He's saying I'm a bad person. I'm like, I'm not saying anything about you.
You can like what you like.
Please
people.
love that. It's great. Love it. I don't. I like the Golden Age. I like the Bronze Age. I like the pre-Golden Age when they were mystery men. They didn't call them that back then, but you know what I mean, like the Shadow and all of that. I love that stuff. I love the Golden Age stuff because it's just way crazier than I think people give it credit for.
And
some of those guys were definitely hot.
Really gruesome, really gruesome.
And really gruesome and really sexy and really kind of PG-13 to R-rated. You'd be surprised at what those guys got, which is why we ended up with a freaking Comics Code Authority, because they were going buck wild in the Golden Age. They were, go look at those Phantom Lady covers and you tell me what was going on in that book. Okay. But
I remember reading EC Comics for the first time, and I was like, "Yeah, okay, I don't agree with the Comics Code thing, but I can get it. I get it.
I can see why that, right." And by the way, go and look at those old EC comics and tell me how dated they feel. Some of that stuff is terrifying, you know. But anyway, yeah. So I like that stuff. But in terms of Infinite Frontier, our playing field was different than what had come before us. After the previous crises, all they did was reshuffle the deck and put everything back to zero. This crisis was kind of like if you took a library of books and just threw all the library books on the floor and said, you can choose the narrative. All these books are the same book, and you put them in any order you want, and that's the book. Okay. I'm guessing Dark Crisis will put things to right in that regard, that there has to be at least one primary timeline where things happen in a particular order.
Yeah.
You know,
I've been doing the same thing pretty much my whole life, because like especially for somebody like Superman, because I don't like, this is blasphemy to a lot of people, I don't like John Byrne Superman. But
it is blasphemy. How dare you? What is wrong with you?
But
you don't have a soul. What do you mean?
I like what everyone else did with John Byrne Superman, you know, Roger Stern and Carl Kiesel and all of them.
Sure.
But so I just try to pretend that the Silver Age, Bronze Age Superman's mythos just goes right into that. You know what I mean?
Sure. And that's legit. Hey, as of death metal, you're absolutely right. It's true. And if anyone wants to argue with it, all you get to say is everything's in, man. Everything's in. So I don't think that'll last much longer. I have a feeling that was a little bit less of a solution than they thought it was.
Yeah, when they came out with that, I was like, so you gave up. I mean, it's fine. I respect your decision to give up, but you gave up.
Well, maybe. I think I can see what the thought process was. I think if the Dio stays around, we don't know what we would have got with all of this. But if you want the books to each stand alone and not be as tightly connected in continuity, then telling the writers continuity, don't worry about it because everything is in. What's the opposite of that? The corollary of that is anything you don't like is out. Right? So if you're writing Batman and I'm writing Nightwing, and I want to tell a story that sort of conflicts with what you're doing with that relationship, Bruce and Dick, in your story, so what? Maybe the people reading Nightwing aren't reading Batman, and vice versa. So it doesn't matter. Go do your thing, have a ball. I can see an editorial. I can see a certain mindset at the editorial level saying that's great. Each book's its island, its own little island, and then we'll have Justice League where they get together. But even that doesn't really relate directly. So let's say Batman and Catwoman get married in a given book. Okay, but there's a whole bunch of fans who don't want to see that happen. Great, go read Detective Comics. They don't even like each other in that. And it's not set in the past, it's set right now. Right? So, I can see how that might be attractive. I just don't necessarily think they thought it through how much people really like that aspect of the
Yeah.
interconnectedness of this happened in this order. Dick Grayson is no longer going out with Starfire. He's really obsessed and in love with Barbara Gordon, who is absolutely not sleeping with Bruce Wayne, wherever the hell that came from, for 5 minutes.
It's like
that was
one
disgusting.
person,
Sorry.
like Bruce Timm's favorite ship for some reason, and like no one else likes it ever.
Why? No, not canon, not paying attention. But although it is canon because everything's in. So, but I'm saying,
But you get to choose.
I think that a straight line continuity that makes sense is something that is actually a reason that Marvel was beating the crap out of DC for so many decades, was that Marvel was designed to be a cohesive, interconnected universe. And DC is a whole bunch of little islands that got corporately absorbed into each other and forced to work together. Yeah. And on a certain level, they kind of don't ever really work. Each one of those superheroes was meant to be the only superhero in their universe.
Yeah.
And forcing them to work because Marvel designed their universe to have interconnectivity, it kind of works and people kind of like it and they're kind of used to it. But there's something to be said for splitting them all off into their own Earths and having crossover events where they meet up to be the Justice. I'm not saying that anyone will do that or that I would do it if I were in charge, but you could make that work and it might actually be easier on everybody.
Yeah, it's like, the thing is, that model, I feel, has always kind of been the model for most quote unquote shared universes where it's just fast and loose. Marvel is an exception because, like, when the Flintstones met the Jetsons, that's, you know, they're not meant to be one universe. That's just a crossover.
Yeah, that's just weird. Yeah, I mean, again, Stan was a genius in a lot of ways, and one of them was marketing. He figured out the way to not be DC, because if we try to be DC, DC's going to kill us because they're already DC and they have the market share. We got to do something different, original, and something that's going to make us absolutely different than what they're doing. So that the people, when they buy our books, are going to have to choose to buy our books. It's not going to be like, oh, this guy kind of looks like Superman. Why am I buying that? I'll just buy Superman. No. Marvel Comics are over here, man. You want this, you want Marvel Comics. So DC Comics, I think it suffers from too many corporate takeovers in too short a time. I think ultimately, if it suffers from anything, it has nothing to do with the stories being told, it has nothing to do with the editorial vision. It's that they can't sustain an editorial vision if people keep buying them and telling them to change shit every 5 seconds. You know, no writers who aren't, I mean, I guess people like Bendis, Middleton, maybe, Middleton, can have enough clout where they can sort of muscle their way through some of the bigger stuff that might go wrong with their book. But on the whole, if my experience is any guide, we're off on our own little island. Unless somebody felt I needed to know something, or I reached out myself to get information from another writer or from my own editorial team, no one's volunteering it. Like, you know, so there needs to be a Jim Shooter.
That's a controversial statement.
You know what? Bite me with that. People don't like a boss who acts like a boss. Yeah, well, it's not their job to be liked by you. If anybody, I'm not recommending it specifically is Jim Shooter, although I would not necessarily mind that. I'm saying you need someone who has the clout to be able to say, no, Geoff Thorne, no, Mark Waid, no, whoever who's writing whatever book. This is where the company's going, and it's going to be going that way for the next 3 years, because this is how it's going to get mapped out. I'm not telling you what to do in your story. I'm saying here's where the walls and the guidelines are inside your story. You cannot blow up Gotham City. Sorry. But because if you blow up Gotham City, someone in Metropolis is going to notice that, and it's going to have ripple effects that are going to require logically certain things to happen, which I don't wish to have happen, and I'm the EIC. So no, figure out something else. Well, when the model of making comics shifted from bullpen, on-site, on-staff, salaried people making the books, it shifted exclusively to freelancers, work from home, bring in or mail in your work, you're an independent contractor. The independent contractors are all individual businesses. They're the boss. I'm not really happy with you telling me no on my genius story, dude. Right? I'm not really happy that you're criticizing my gorgeous panel. It's so action-packed. Yes, but this is a quiet moment at a nunnery. I don't know where that dragon came from. It's freaking awesome, dude. Don't cut my wisdom. You know, that kind of friction is what I think currently kind of exists. And I don't know that you can have a gym shooter because Marvel is not its own entity and DC is not its own entity. Whoever that gym shooter is has to answer to whoever the nameless person that none of us know who they are on the board at Warner's who says, yeah, I know it's going great, but I remember when the Riddler wore that weird unitard thing and it all had the question marks all over it and the V and all that. Can he be that now? Let's make him be that. Really? Yes, really. Go do that. You know, and that gym shooter guy, now he goes and does that.
Mm-hmm.
He's not really running anything. He's now middle management.
That's
lower
true.
Middle management. So I don't know that those days can come back unless you start your own company.
Geoff,
you know,
can we do a word association here? I'm going to name some names and just give me a quick.
Sure. We'll see.
And then the last name I'm going to name is going to jump right into my next and possibly last question. So,
okay.
The first name is John Stewart.
Strong.
Joe Mullane.
I guess hard.
Kelly Quintella.
Liar.
Simon Baz.
What's the word? Compassionate.
The New Gods.
Chaotic.
Harold Jordan.
It's hard for it.
Jack Kirby.
King.
Tom Rainey.
Gold.
Marco Santucci.
Maestro.
And finally, Chris Cross.
Oh my God. OG.
And with that, with Chris Cross, what's next for Geoffrey Thorne?
Well, Chris and I are doing the Blood Syndicate. Obviously, they've announced the hell out of it. We're definitely doing it. We're definitely doing it. It's weird. It's really weird.
And Chris Cross is the OG for the Blood Syndicate.
Oh my God. Yes, he is. He absolutely is. But he's updating everything visually. One of the things I'm not doing very much like I do in my scripts is there are photo references in almost all of my scripts because I'm trying to make sure people like, especially if it's in a foreign country or if there's a, like, I want this to look like a Mongolian tent, you know, well, if you don't know what that is, let me help you. Here's what the inside of a Mongolian tent looks like. But with this, what do you tell the guy who created the look for over half of the characters in this? Like for like, if there's 10 characters and created the look for 9 of them, like update the characters, create like do whatever. So there's less of that in this book, except to show what my vibe is in my head of how I'm writing.
Since Chris is, you know, the OG Blood Syndicate guy, do you feel like your hands are less on the wheel than on Green Lantern, for example?
Not at all. Not at all. He's not that way. This is my story. He seems genuinely pleased with the weird changes I'm making. But most of the changes are more like logic changes because it's not 1990, whatever. It's 2022. So there's just a lot of stuff that can't work the way it did back then, whether I want it to be, whether it's me writing it or not. If you're trying to update it and not just, you know, it's 30 years later and it's still Paris Island, we're not doing that. So there are a lot of logical changes that had to happen. I presume he's fine with it because I haven't heard a thing about it. Also, he's been on all the other books, or at least on Static. So it's not like he's not aware of the sort of different things going on. Probably more so than me, since he's working on more than one book and I'm only working on mine. It's different, but it's also a lot the same in some ways. It's still about the same. It's still about the same set of humanity. It's still about the same economic class of people. I said this in another interview. These are not superheroes. These are people with superpowers.
Yeah.
They're trying to be good, most of them in the world, but these are people who don't take you to jail. They solve problems permanently. They do not. There's none of that. Oh, the Joker killed 5 people. He's really messed up in the head. Let's get him some help and put him over in this asylum. No, 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 no. The Joker's not walking away. The Joker's not walking away.
Were you asked to pitch for Blood Syndicate, or could you have pitched
Yes,
for any
yes.
milestone?
No, I made it known that I wanted Blood Syndicate before there was even a milestone 2.0. I've been saying I want the Blood Syndicate for over a decade, long before there was a new Blood Syndicate. But yeah, they said, okay, Mr. Big Talk, you want this book? Let's hear your big pitch. And I guess maybe, I don't know if they thought I didn't have one, but I absolutely do have one. So I pitched it to them. They're like, that is madness. Yes, let's do that. So
Not your big pitch,
yeah.
but what about your elevator pitch? Can you tell us?
No, it's the Blood Syndicate. Like it's a remix. I was less of a reboot and more of a remix. The only biggest difference was since the 90s, a lot of American families have people who went to war and spent, like a father and son could be in the same unit. That's how much American soldiers were out in the world shooting and getting shot at for this long. You could have a child while in the military and then stay in the same conflict long enough for that child to grow up and join the military and be in your unit. So
That's true.
that is something that was very different in the 90s that did not exist. So that's part of this book. There are things you can say that they could only sort of get at a little bit back in the 90s because of the way comics work, the political climate in the US, whatever the hell. There were things you couldn't get. I asked them point blank, is this a PG-13 book or an R-rated book? Because the pitch I gave them would very easily be an R-rated pitch. They're like, Geoff, PG-13, stop it. So I was like, fine. All that means is a level of sex, a level of violence drops down to a manageable level. But the Blood Syndicate were not like, I don't think they were doing this then either, but I'm not looking for anything controversial with the book. I'm just trying to tell the truth of these people as I have known them in my life, real people. I mean.
Yeah.
And that's that sort of segment of society, which I have known periodically in my life. I'm drawing from that and trying to be truthful.
I know you're not trying to be controversial, but that is controversial to some people to be telling that kind of truth.
Well, I've said this again. I'm repeating some of the things because different audiences see different podcasts. But we have as a lead character in this book the two things that are very different are, I'm not doing any queer self-hate in this book. In the 90s, things were horrible for that community. Horrifyingly horrible. So much so that I think people born post that period, in the same way that I don't really understand what World War II or Jim Crow or slavery was really like, I don't think they quite get how horrible it was. So there was a lot of that through this book and trying to get at these issues and overcome them and help people overcome basically a sense of I have to be in the closet or I hate myself when I look in the mirror, or all of these things. The world does not accept me in this particular way. But queer people aren't playing that anymore. So the Fade character was a long-suffering, I love the straight boy, kind of unrequited love. I will always love him and he can never love me back because I'm gay and he's straight. I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that to Fade in this book. So that's a difference. Masquerade, the Masquerade character was the first female to male trans character. Also self-hating in a lot of ways. That's out. Not doing that. But on the other side of that, one of our main characters, one of the heroes of the story, starts the story as a homophobe. And he's not violently homophobic, but microaggressions for sure. And he's one of the, all of these characters are anti-heroes except for one. Everybody's just got an agenda and they're trying to be good, but they're all ruthless people. So this character is a homophobe at the beginning of the book. Part of it is about his journey away from that. Obviously, I'm not going to leave him. I'm not promoting that attitude, but people have it. There are plenty of people who would just walk around, shake your hand or whatever. But if you ask them point blank, oh, damn, you're a homophobe. Well, this guy is one of that guy, and we're going to watch that journey. Maybe that'll be controversial, maybe not. I don't actually care. I'm just trying to, same thing I said about Green Lantern. Y'all can get mad all you want. I'm telling the story I came to tell.
Yeah, I
That's
feel like
it.
that kind of character. I feel like that kind of character these days, like a lot of people get mad right away if you portray somebody who's a hero as a homophobe. But then, you gotta wait, guys. You gotta wait for
Look,
chances.
if
You
you
gotta
think
wait.
you're going to get everything on page 2, if you see my name, you should dismiss me. I don't do that. I'm right. There's no cut to the chase. There's no cut to the chase. You got to go through the whole chase. Sorry. So, and again, if that's not your kind of comic book, you see my name, you know what you're going to get. I'm not just going to give you everything right away. It's going to be difficult. So,
How's it feel to finally be working on the Blood Syndicate after advocating for it for so many years?
I am freaked out. Every once in a while, I realize what I'm writing, who I'm writing. There's a little voice in the back of my head. Remember, you're not writing the old book, right? But there's a lot in the old book that can work in this remix version. So almost all of it. It's just how do we introduce these things? Like I was saying in I got interviewed a couple of times, and there's a character that I deeply love, and I was like, yeah, she's not going to show up in arc 1, in the first arc. And then as soon as I sat down after that, I was like, well, wait a minute, though. Wait a minute. Yes, she could. So I don't know if it'll happen. They have to sign off on this usage. But if they do, then something I thought was true last week is now no longer true. Like
I think I know the character you're talking about. So.
She's my favorite.
Yeah.
So it's that. And my young self is dancing a jig every time I sit down to write this thing, and I love it. I love it. I write comics. I write comics because I love it. Like it's not like I'm paying the bills with this stuff. I just love it. I've always loved it, and I'm always gonna love it. And to get to write these particular characters after loving them so much when I was much younger, a much younger man, I'm amazed my life turned out that I get to do this.
In as much as everything is different from 1992, what things are the same?
Racism's real. People in poverty have a harder life than the rest of us know. The world is a much smaller place than I think a lot of Americans give it credit for. Immigrants should be treated like human beings, shockingly, because they are. And family is what you make it, not what you're born into. So all of those things were true of the original book, and they're true of this. The world is a chaotic, messed up place for people of color in a lot of countries. Poverty added into that mix is no good. But this is not a book about sermons any more than the original Blood Syndicate was. I don't do soapboxes. There's no one's going to give a Captain America speech. Or if they do, you're going to be like, oh, shit, that guy's crazy. But yeah, it's not that kind of a book. I'm not using the book for anything. I'm telling the story of these people.
You're reflecting the reality.
Yeah, I mean, what John Byrne actually said something, and I loved it. I'm going to misparaphrase it, but if you want realism in superhero comics, you're an idiot. What you want is plausibility. What you want is believability. And that comes from, are the characters true? Do they feel true? That's what I strive for. So in this case, which is it's a very different book than Green Lantern. If you read Green Lantern and you think you're going to get that same kind of tone and that same kind of pacing,
I don't think so.
Yeah, you better wake up, Muttley, because that ain't happening. Um, uh, but that's the point. It's like moving to a new city where the culture is different and they speak a different language. You have to learn the language, or you're not going to be able to function. Like if I ever moved to the Philippines, I wouldn't be speaking English all the time by the time I was leaving the Philippines. Right? Like
Yeah.
you have to be. I mean, you can
At
get
least
by with it, but if
conversationally, yeah.
you can get by in English almost anywhere. But if you want to really be in the new place and that's not the primary language, you need to learn the primary language to really be in the place. So,
Yeah.
and that goes from city to city in the United States. Growing up in New York, if you think you're going to take your New York nonsense down to New Orleans and think it's all going to play there just like it did in New York, you're an idiot. It's not going to. And vice versa. You have to dig in. So that's the same thing with the Blood Syndicate. It is absolutely not like anything of the other books I've read, which I hope that I've written, which I hope are not like one another. I hope Mosaic and Green Lantern are not in any way the same kind of story. And I hope this is not like either one of those stories. So we'll see. We will see. We will see. 6 issues.
Blood Syndicate is, and it's kind of a little bit of a reunion for you too, because the main cover is drawn by Dexter Sawyer.
My man. I love Dexter. I love Dexter. He's awesome. That guy's, all of these people are awesome. I wish I could meet some of them someday.
Yeah, that would be really fun.
Well, when COVID goes away, maybe that will happen.
Blood Syndicate is out on May 10th, 6 issues. So thank you, Jeff. Congratulations.
Thank you, brother.
Green Lantern, what a hell of a run. Thank you.